All right. Bear with me. I'm struggling. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Educate the World's first event for 2022. As we have been posting to let everyone know, we are not playing this year. We're trying to get our finances in order, our bodies in order, our minds, our spirits, and all that good stuff in between. I'll introduce myself. My name is Dr. LaShawn Stitt, and I am the founder of Educate the World Incorporated. We are a 501c3 organization that was actually developed to help communities in the Baltimore County, Northwest and Southwest area. But through the pandemic, we've discovered that you got to kind of cast the net a little bit further, because folks, it doesn't matter which geographic region you're in, folks are still thirsty for knowledge, and they want to share and they want to get support. And so hence we are definitely, besides the Omicron or Marion, whatever variant they have going on now, mostly everyone is switching back to virtual. And so we are keeping up with the pace and keeping up with the time. And so in order to do that, we have Miss Sharon Lewis, who is a financial advisor. She is based in Maryland, but I'll allow Ms. Lewis to give us a little bit more information about herself, but she has over 20 plus years in financial planning, and we've had conversation. It was very brief, but we are like kindred spirits because we both have 3 children. We both have, the gap in between. And so when you have conversation with good people, it just makes things flow the way it should. And so I will allow Ms. Sharon to go ahead and share her background with us, and then we can get into what we're planning on doing today.
Thank you, Dr. Stitt. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience, and thank you, Educate the World, and definitely thank you, Naomi, for reaching out to me. I really appreciate that. So, like Dr. Stitt mentioned, my name is Sharon Lewis, and I've been in financial services for over 20 years, simply helping families get back on track with their finances. A lot of folks, think that, it's a perfect path, but it's not. It's really not a perfect path. And I tell folks my story is simply, I didn't get to this level without making tons of mistakes. So I've made tons of mistakes along the way, which I've learned from. And sometimes you have to fall down a couple of times to learn that lesson, right? So that's life. And so I'm going to just give you an overview of some basic concepts. And so that way, you guys can have an idea of how do you just start? Like, where do you start? Just understanding the foundation and background when it comes to finances. And of course, if there are questions in between, you can stop me at any time and ask questions as I go through. So I'm going to share my presentation and hopefully
Ready.
Yeah. Hopefully it will allow me to share. Just give me a second and then I'll go into presentation mode. So hopefully, can everyone see my screen okay? You guys are good? Okay, so we're going to talk about money today, right? And so just a little bit about myself, like I mentioned. Hopefully you guys can see the screen okay too. I'm a wife and mom of 3, licensed advisor, author of Daphne Dollars and Friends Financial Education Series. And I'm really, it wasn't like a goal of mine to write books. It was really something I felt the need to do based off of my experience with speaking with folks. What ended up happening is folks in my community, my friends and family, people that I knew, there was no one that I knew within my group that understood money. right? And when I would go out and meet with families, I realized there was such a big disconnect. Like I would sit across the kitchen table, just basic core foundational concepts they did not understand. And I did not understand until I started in this profession. One thing that drove me to it, to being a financial professional, is like my mom. She's from well, she's no longer here, but she's from a different country, and throughout her entire time on the earth, um, up until the time I became a financial professional, no one ever approached her about having a financial plan. And she was at 50 years old. And it was very common. And so it wasn't just my mom. She was just one of many. And so I kind of felt like, wow, who would have talked to my mom about money? Because we did what traditionally she did when she grew up. And that's what we tend to do. We do culturally what's known to us. So folks who are from the Caribbean, because my mother, she's from South America, but our country is very similar to folk, the Caribbean model. And they do something called a susu or a box, or, that's how you saved, right? And so that's what we did. And that's when my mother, introduced us to the susu. That's what she knew. We did susu. That's how we bought our cars. That's how we bought our houses. And of course, susu is live and rampant today. And I'm not advocating for susu. I'm just sharing my story, because actually the susus that they have now are very different from traditional susus. But that's all she knew. And so I felt like writing these books, teaching kids about money, opening up the conversations earlier on was so helpful and beneficial, to not just the kids, but to the parents, right? Because we don't really always talk about money in the household. So, but why are people having so many financial challenges today? There are so many challenges that exist. Folks, we don't have opportunity to get a financial education. We don't have a game plan and a financial coach, right? So we tend to experience financial challenges for these particular reasons. And what I've found, right, that there are 5 main financial concerns that people are facing. It's debt, it's trying to figure out retirement, or maybe they haven't started saving for retirement, having a desire to set money aside for your kids, and then life insurance. Either we don't have it or we don't have enough, or even the wrong kind. Okay. And then also the income gap. So these are the 5 main concerns that we find that are in existence. There might be others, right? But these are the top. And so what we try to teach families is simply focus on your financial house, building your financial house. How do you build that financial house? So just as you would build a regular house, right? You want to start with your foundation, right? And your foundation is what is going to hold up everything in that house. And so that's protecting your income. Most people lose sight of that particular area because protecting your income is life insurance, right? And so if you are the breadwinner in your family and something happens to you and that income is no longer coming in, then your house is financially devastated, right? So your foundation is broken. Right. And then you want to focus on creating an emergency fund. And we talk about that in the presentation. And then also debt reduction. How do we get out of debt? How do we have a plan? If you have debt, we need a plan to strategically get out of debt. And I'm gonna share with you, debt is a mentality as well, right? Because I even remember growing up in my younger years, not thinking for my mortgage that I will never pay that off because the number was so large. I couldn't even fathom the concept of paying my mortgage off. But now I look back and I was just like, wow, why did I think I couldn't do it back then? Right? It was my mindset. I had to shift the way I was thinking about money. And then we focused on our investments within our financial house. And then we have to have legal protection. So, and that's having a will. Who's going to execute? And I know sometimes we don't like talking about these things, but we have to talk about this. We don't want to leave, you don't want to leave your house in financial disarray, because of poor planning, right? And so these are the areas we like to help people understand. And so these questions are actually questions I will address throughout the presentations in terms of having enough and how much you should have within your emergency fund. So we'll talk a little bit more about the financial house throughout the presentation. So the foundation part of the financial house, okay? It's life insurance, right? Why do we have car insurance? To protect our car in the event that something happens. Like you never sit there and say, well, even though some people probably do it, they don't, and it's illegal. But we know why we have car insurance, because if something happens to our car, we want to make sure it's protected. We have homeowners insurance or renters insurance. We know why we have it, because if something happens to our home, we want to make sure we can recover the damages, right? But life insurance, oftentimes that topic is not really, people don't really focus on that because they're too busy thinking of the death. It's not the death that's the challenge, it's who you're leaving behind. Who are you taking care of financially, and who will need this money or your income should something happen to you? Do you want to make sure that your family is living in the same financial space as if you were alive? Do you want them to live better, or would you want them to live worse? So depending on how you set up your insurance will determine what the situation you leave your family in, right? And oftentimes, we're seeing a lot of situations where people are raising money through GoFundMe to pretty much pay for funeral expenses, and I don't know, and it's if it's just me, but when I watch the news, and I don't even like watching the news, my husband gets on me about that too. But when I do watch the news and I hear about tragic stories and I hear about families that are devastated where someone has passed away, the only thing that comes to my mind is, did they have life insurance? I'm praying that they had life insurance to take care of that family, right? And so this is just really going to the questions that you have to ask yourself, which is what I touched on a few seconds ago. Things that you have to think about, right? How soon would your income stop if you died today? Which of your family's bills will stop? Your bills will never stop. If you're gone, your bills are not going to stop, right? And so what will happen to your family if you die today and your income stopped, but your bills didn't? We have to think about it in that perspective, right? How do we ensure that your family can continue on with the goals that you have set out within that family, with or without you, right? And so, so we addressed that question. So here, I'm going to touch on this very quickly, but life insurance is confusing. I'm not going to lie, because there's so many options out there. You have insurance at your job. You have this cash value insurance that comes under a variety of different names. And then there's term. And there's always this discussion of, when I meet with families, which is the best kind, okay? And so I'll start with the job really quick. The job it's okay to take advantage of what your job has to offer. But keep in mind, when you leave your job or your job leaves you, you won't have coverage. So you want to always be in a position where it's okay to take advantage of what your job has to offer, but you want to always have your own private insurance outside of your job. So that way you are in control. Too many times I've seen where people only have life insurance on the job, and then 10, 20 years later, they become sick, they get on disability, they lose their job, and guess what? They no longer qualify for life insurance, right? So that's something you want to think about. So cash value in term, and is basically cash value is a bundled product, savings and life insurance in one. And this is sold as a savings plan. It's not a real savings plan because essentially you're paying for two things, but you really can only get one at a time. Cash value comes under a variety of different names: whole life, universal, variable life. There's tons of names out there. And essentially, in this example, John and Mary, they have life insurance, they're paying $295, and the premiums are higher for cash value policies because the idea is that you're getting a benefit. The idea is that you're having built up savings there. And so let's just say John and Mary, they put aside their $295, they're 30, and they have a plan. By the time they're 65, they're going to retire and they're going to travel. So they have that $124,000 savings there. So John and Mary are excited because they actually have a plan. So then John and Mary, let's fast forward, let's change the scenario. Let's say John and Mary are ready to retire. They paid their mortgage off, their kids are out the house, and they're looking at that 124 because they were like, hey, honey, we've been saving for 30 years, 35 years. Let's go get that money and start traveling. But the challenge is they asked the insurance company for that $124,000, and the insurance company says two things. Well, John and Mary, you can borrow the money or surrender your policy. Well, what do you mean? John and Mary they don't understand what that means. That means they have to borrow the $124,000 that they thought they were saving all these years. The only way they can access this is to borrow their money. And guys, there are tons of information out there that makes cash value sound very attractive. They create all kinds of models to make it look as if it's the best thing since sliced bread. And honestly, it is not an effective strategy when it comes to planning, if you're looking to invest your money. Because now John and Mary thought they were saving and now they have to borrow this money. So how smart is that all this time, John and Mary thought they had some money set aside and the only way they can get it is to borrow it. And the alternative to that would be to cancel their policy. That's surrendering. So the only way John and Mary can access their savings is to cancel their policy, take out the cash, or borrow their own money. Okay, so that's why I said it's a bundled product, because that $124,000 is the same as the $150. There's no separation, right? So that's why the insurance company only gives you the option to borrow or to cash it out, because the insurance companies do not separate those amounts. So what we encourage folks to do is to buy term insurance cheap, invest the difference. So we were able to show John and Mary, take that same $295, and now their premium is less, $126. Plus they have more coverage. So if John and Mary pass away, their family will not be left financially devastated, because now they have $400,000 that can carry them further, as opposed to $150,000. So now we save John and Mary $169, And if we invest that 169 at 9%, and so this is over a period of 30 years, right? A little bit more, it's over $500,000. So at 65, because John and Mary have been saving and investing and paying low cost life insurance, by the time they're 65, they'll have over $500,000. So we like to teach people why investing is so important, why understanding the importance of investing. And that investing of itself is its own conversation, because sometimes we have fear. We have all kinds of feelings about investing, and I'm not going to address that here, but that is definitely the way to go, is understanding basic concepts of life insurance is not an investment or savings vehicle. If you want to invest, okay? And so we'll talk about that. So we like to teach folks what we call the theory of decreasing responsibility. Because when you start off, you have kids, you have mortgage, you got debt, you're young in your marriage, everything is just new and you're building. But what happens over a period of time is that your kids get older, you start to pay off your debt, your focus changes. Now you're like, well, let me focus on retirement. What does my retirement look like for me? And so your responsibility changes. And as you approach retirement, your children are grown, your debts are paid, and now you're focused on, how am I going to live in retirement? But the challenge is, if you don't plan the way you should in the early years, then you will have a challenge in your later years. Social Security is one of the ways folks receive income in retirement. And I don't have the exact statistic, but it's something like 70% of Americans have Social Security as their only source of retirement income. And that creates a challenge, because, it can only go so far, right? And so, we talk about that of itself is its own webinar, but we have to think more strategically about our future self. I know sometimes we're just living in the present, but it's okay to start planning for our future or getting back on track, right? Because life happens in between, right? So I'm going to just skip over this quickly, but the will is very important. If you don't have a will, your government has one for you. And guess what? It's not going to be what you planned it to be. You need a will because it avoids family feuds and conflicts. I mean, I remember when my grandmother passed away, she did not have a lot of assets. She didn't have a will, so we had to go to the courts. We had to file paperwork just to take care of her estate. And it wasn't even that large. So it's a lot of headache on the folks you're leaving behind when you do not give instructions on how things should be handled. Also, the will takes care of power of attorney. Sometimes your folks are incapacitated. They can't speak for themselves. So who's going to be that person speaking on their behalf? A lot of times let's just say financial institutions are not going to talk to you just because you're the daughter or husband of the person that's incapacitated. If there are no legal documents or something on file that says it's okay, they're not going to speak with you about financial matters of that loved one, right? So we have to think about that. We have to have medical directives, right? So these are things that we need to do it while we're in the space of being able to do it. Okay.
Can I interject 1 second?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So I'm so glad that, first of all, I'm writing everything down. My pad is full. Next page. But this particular piece is really important to me, and it hits home because my mom passed away and she didn't have a will. And when I tell you the nonsense that was involved, I have the fear, right? I know I need to do it, but I have the fear that many others have. But this thing right here, this will is so important because my sister and I, we were at the courts, then it was the wrong court, then it was you have to do this, and then my mother didn't have a lot of assets either. And it was a lot of headache for this much.
Yes,
Honestly, that's what it turned out to be. And I'm saying, wow, why does it have to be so complicated? But again, like you said, if you don't create it, the government is going to get in your business and they'll create it for you. So I
exactly.
really don't want my children, or my husband, God forbid, however it goes, when the time comes, I don't want anyone to have to deal with that. So I'm going to get past my fear, and hopefully work with you so you can help me, because
Yes,
it's important. I know it's so important. But again, not knowing, you could just think, oh yeah, when I pass away, such and such is gonna get this, honey, and such. And nope, 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 it doesn't work out that way. So thank you for
exactly.
bringing this very, very important part of finances into the picture. And I'll let you
Yeah, you're
continue.
welcome. No, yeah, you're welcome because definitely I've seen a lot in my space, and like you said, the frustration, the arguments, the disagreements for family members, because when your loved one is, whether they're incapacitated or they've passed away, emotions are taking over. Logic goes out the window. And you're just dealing with emotions. And so, and that's why we say just have the conversations before it even get to that point. Um, but yes, yes, this is something we all need. So great. Um, Emergency accounts. Okay, so we talked about the financial house. One of the areas we have to work on is the emergency fund. And so I know this might be challenging for most people to do, setting aside 3 to 6 months of their income or expenses, um, in the case of emergencies, right? What's happening is people, your retirement account is becoming your emergency account, because folks who have, left their jobs, or maybe their jobs left them, they exhausted all of their liquid money and have had to tap into their retirement money. And now, and with the economy and the state of everything we're dealing with, folks are rebuilding. They're starting over. There's so many stories with folks rebuilding. They had money saved, or maybe they didn't, and they're working toward rebuilding that back again. And you can rebuild it. It's going to take time, but we recommend 3 to 6 months. And what I tell people, if you can't get to that 3 to 6 months, at least work toward your first 1,000, and then work toward the next 1,000, or at least something that can sustain you for at least 30 days. You want to think about that as well, because emergencies will come up. Life will happen. That's definitely a constant in our life right now. So yeah. So did you want to say something, Dr. Stitt? Okay. Okay, good. So we want to make sure we do that. So the other area we talk about is debt. Guys, oh, I know we just get headaches thinking about this. Debt is the financial cancer of the financial services industry. One of the areas we do help families with is showing them how to strategically get out of debt. And this is not one of those programs where you pay into it. And this is really just being disciplined. And we show you how to tackle your debt and which debt to tackle at a time. Some of you may have heard of it, called the Snowball Effect, right? So we create this for you, complimentary. So let's look at this example. 35-year-old person. She has all different type of accounts. This is very typical because it's a retail card, credit card, loan, whatever. And so what we show you is, okay, we're going to focus on one account at a time. And then what happens is you're going to still pay your minimum payments for your other accounts, but any extra money you have, you're going to focus on that one card. But if you don't have extra money to focus on that one card, it's okay. Okay. We're just going to pay that minimum payment for that one account. So in this case, she's paying her minimum payment of $220 for retail card number one. Now, retail card number one has been paid off. We freed up retail card number one, but I know what folks tend to do. We get that extra $220. We know we paid off retail card number one, and we like, yes, let me start making some plans for this money. No, we have to pull it back. We have to create discipline because we create reasons why we have to use that $220, when in fact, what you should do is take that $220 and immediately stack it to the next minimum, to the next account. So now credit card number two, the minimum payment changes from $353 to $573. Same money that you were spending, but now you're redirecting it to the next account. And what I recommend is set it up systematically. Because if you know you are not disciplined, then you want the credit card company to draft that money from your account on a designated time. If you are not disciplined, and you know yourself, right? Because that is the only way to force certain behaviors. And we have to know and be okay with that. I know I'm a type of person, I'm okay with take it out of my account, draft it from me. You know, I am that type of person. And you want to follow that process until all of the debts are paid. And like I said, this does take discipline. And so what we were able to do with this young lady is, if she did not meet with us, it would have taken her 23 years to get out of debt. She would have paid over $214,000 in interest. But because we provided her with a strategic plan to get out of debt, her debt is paid off in 9 years, including her mortgage. Guys, I talked to you earlier about mortgages and the fact that for me, I had a different mindset about debt, right? I had a mortgage when I was 24. And I think back and I look at this and I say to myself, oh my God, if my mindset had only been different, right? So she's able to get out of debt in 9 years, including her mortgage. And we saved her $130,000 in interest. And guess what? We freed up $2,720. She was applying it to debt. So now we take that money and invest it at 9% return. Look what she has when she retires. So now that 2.4 million might be going over your head because you're like, can't nobody get no 2.4 million. I don't know anyone who has because that's probably your first thing. Who do I know that has 2.4 million? The thing is, because you're probably thinking, only if I win the lotto or if I'm in, a sports, maybe in sports or some actor or rapper, that's the only way. But it's not true. You can have 2.4 million. The thing is, there are more self-made millionaires, average working individuals who are walking around than folks who have inherited money, guys. And as long as we have a plan, you can build wealth. So that's important to understand. This don't get, don't think that you cannot accomplish this. We have to work on our mindset too. Okay. So investing. So I've been talking about investing. Well, what does that mean? There are tons of investment opportunities out there, whether it's real estate, Bitcoins, it's this, it's that, stocks, it's bonds, there are tons of investment vehicles out there, but I'm going to focus only on mutual funds, right? It's the more common type of investment. It's been around over 80 plus years. And what in mutual funds simply, what are they? What are mutual funds? It's a collection of stocks, right? So individual investors like you, me, and maybe hundreds of thousands of other people, we all have different budgets. Maybe I can do 100, maybe Dr. Stick can do 500 a month, and we have a bunch of other people that can do different amounts. And so what happens is that money is pooled by an investment company. And the investment company, and it doesn't matter whichever investment company you choose, you can pick many investment companies. Mutual funds work the same way. It does not matter. So the investment company has folks that work for them. They're called money managers, and their job is to manage the money that's pooled into the investment company. So the money manager, they create portfolios, different types of portfolios. And in those portfolios, they're taking the money that was pooled and they're buying stocks in different industries in different areas. So they may have stock in Amazon. In this example, they have stock in Verizon, McDonald's, they have Microsoft, they have a whole bunch of different companies because now they're dealing with hundreds and thousands of dollars. So they can go and purchase large amounts of stock, right? So a person like me who only have my budget is $100 a month, I can't go and buy 150 different companies with my $100 a month, but I can invest in a portfolio that has 150 different companies. You know, one of the examples I like to use is Amazon. Amazon stock is about 3,000 a month. The last time I checked, I'm sorry, 3,000 a share. And here we are ordering from Amazon every day, 10 times. But we can't even buy their stock. And so you can invest in a mutual fund that owns a piece of Amazon. You can invest in a mutual fund that owns a little bit of Apple. You know, there's some stocks that are more affordable where you can buy them one-on-one, but mutual funds is a great way for people to get started, to get a little bit more diversification. If you have a retirement plan already at your job, you are most likely already investing in a mutual fund because that's what it is made up of. It's a mutual fund, okay? And with this little, because people say, well, I don't really have money to invest. With as little as $25 to $50 a month, you can set up an investment account, right? And those are the things that we talk to people about. It really does not take a lot. You start, just do something, right? Don't put it off because of this and that and this, because a lot of times you won't accomplish that goal. But if you start and you free up money along the way, then you can always increase and add to that, right? So just simple things we like to teach people when it comes to investing. And then the other challenge is procrastination, right? We love to be like, well, not today. But it costs you. It's expensive to procrastinate. I mean, if you decide to renew your license late, if you decide to pay a ticket late, whatever you decide to do late, it's going to be expensive because you're going to pay a fee. So guess what? Investing can cost you too. And so this is an example. If you wanted to have a certain amount at retirement, let's just say 500,000, and you wanted to retire at 67, the earlier you start, the better position you're in. The challenge is most people don't realize that they're behind. And my personal opinion is if you do not start at the age of 25, then you are way behind, right? And look at this. Setting aside $89 a month at 25 will allow you to accomplish your goal of 500,000 at 67. This is only at a 9% return, right? And if you wait, 10 years, it costs you more to set aside that amount of money just to get that same goal. So we try to teach people to start early as possible. We also sit with folks. We're able to look at how you are investing, because we have tons of folks who put money aside and they're putting it in the wrong places because your money's not growing. You're having most of your money sitting in the bank. The bank is giving you less than 1%, and you feel comfortable with that because it's safe, but it's not safe because everything is going up but your money, right? So we talk to families about, okay, not only setting aside a certain amount, but where are the best places to invest in terms of getting a rate of return, that will allow your money to grow. Okay. And so those are some of the areas we like to address here. It's just simply don't pay the high cost of waiting. So my presentation is over. I really, I hope you guys were able to find the information useful. I do have a, Facebook group that I provide tips. We are always hosting free events all the time, so you can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. So Dr. Stead, I will send it back over to you. I'll stop share. And if you have any questions for me.
Whoa, okay. That's the first thing I'm going to say, because I feel like I'm going to have to schedule my one-on-one because
okay.
I told you off camera, for me, I'm not a saver, I'm a stasher. And so my oldest son, he always says this. He's like, oh man, I know you got some money, because I can stash very well.
Right.
But I have had moments, and I told you this before, I'm like everybody else, where I was good. And then something happened and I had to dip into the savings or dip into the retirement or take from this or take from that. And so, again, I'm not perfect either. And I think there are many folks who are at the point now where they're trying to get it together, but getting past the fear, because I have my fears as well, but getting past the fear of just exploring the ways where you're putting money aside and your money is growing and you're not really like, oh gosh, I got to take 20 from here, because I've had to do it, like, right. Oh, okay, I had like this 200 put aside. Let me take 20 here. Somebody needs this, something happened here. Or you had a picture day or whatever the case may be. But even with like those big things like car repair, I had 2 cars at one time. Just say, I'm not functioning. And it was right. Like, oh man, what do I do? But again, I'm at that phase where I'm well past 25. I started teaching early, so I did have an opportunity, and I told you this before, I had an opportunity to put some money away. But when I left my teaching job, I left that there. And so I self-employed, 52. I've owned a house already, we're working on house number 2, that kind of thing. I have to do something different. Yes. And I'm sure that I can speak for, a lot of families where, okay, we got to recover. We have to, do things differently. And the pandemic has been a gift and a curse for many. And I say it because, there are some people who have been able to see their businesses thrive, right? Purchase homes, get another car, so forth and so on. And then on the flip side, you've had families that have been completely uprooted. Yes. Incomes have been lost, lives have been lost. So that will that you were talking about, that life insurance, like all of these are relative. And so I know I have benefited a great deal. I told you I'm going to schedule my appointment with you. Yes, and you can tell me, girl, if you don't take your money out of here, put it here.
It's so funny you talk about being a stasher, because oftentimes when I do my assessment, I'll ask folks, well, where is your money? And I have to always say, do you have any money under your mattress, in a shoebox?
In a drawer, in a sock.
It's okay, Dr. Stitt, to have a little bit of money in the house, because I feel like everyone should have some quick go-to cash,
Right.
but it's just, you just don't want it to be your bank. You don't want it
Right.
to be substantial amounts of money,
Right.
sitting in the house. You want it to be enough in the event of an emergency. I have to grab it and go,
Right.
like literally that type of
Yes.
scenario. Or
And
like you said, your kids got picture day, and you be like, oh my God, I forgot to give you this.
how many times have we had to deal with that? But
Right.
and it's the segue into young people. I think that's another thing because we have teenagers, and the push for this generation, this what are they? X, Y, Z.
Girl,
I don't
they're
even know.
somewhere in the alphabet.
Yeah, somewhere. But they're not necessarily driven to go to college. So where
Right.
they may not have as many student loan debts like I do, their debt may come someplace else, or they're a little bit wiser about how they are putting their money aside or whatever they're doing. But they are very much in the moment. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, if this is not happening, okay, I'm gone. I'm not
Yes.
worrying about this job. And I think having some sense of consistency and stability when it comes to an emergency, anything,
Right.
even if you're trying to save to travel,
Right.
I think young people, and my mother tried to do it with me, and I didn't listen. I didn't listen. I was like, what is she telling me this for? I don't need to know. I'm
Right.
only 18.
Right.
I'm only, and then yeah, life hit. And I was like, okay, let me try and do it. So I don't want to be 55 trying to figure out how I'm gonna find $2,000 so that I can make this 500. No, I start where I can, and
Exactly.
but then pass this knowledge on to my crew, as well as your family and other families who have young people that will be taking over
Right.
that generation, the generational wealth. And so
Exactly.
I yeah, I'm laughing, I'm making jokes about it, but I said, ooh,
Yes, we're
yeah, I
living
need to
this.
revisit my stuff.
Yes, and it's interesting because my daughter. We talked about my daughter. She's 18 and she has her little part-time job, and I actually, and this is something parents can do. If your kids are working part-time, you can make them set up a retirement account. Like, and please don't do it at the bank because the bank, that's a whole different discussion. But you can have them set up a retirement account. So I set up an individual retirement account, a Roth IRA for my daughter, my 18-year-old. And I said to her, you have to contribute to it, whether it's $25 a month or whatever. And the reason why I did that, because she's 18. So her 10 years from now or her 20 years from now, she'll be in her 40s,
Right.
20 years from. So it's a little bit easier for us to process,
Right.
oh, being in my 40s or being in my 20s. Because when you're 18, you're like 40, that's 100 in their mind, So because we're not, you're not thinking. But
That was me. Mm-hmm.
and so, and I showed her and I said, and then she said to me, well, mommy, I think I want to buy some sneakers and it's going to cost me like $200. I forgot the word that she used, one of the new words. And I said, well, if you want to go buy sneakers for $200, then you need to match your investment account for that 200 too. And then I will allow you to go ahead and buy that $200 sneaker. Why, so it's just having her, even though she doesn't fully understand the result of that investment, I'm planting seeds in her head that if you want to spend that, then you need to match it in your investment. Okay. Right. Buy some stock from Apple. You want to buy an iPhone? Then let's go buy some stock from Apple too and match your investment just the same, So it's having even them think about their decisions. So
Because this is not taught in every school.
no, it's not. It's definitely not. And depending on the location of the school, the priorities of the schools are different.
Yes.
So if the kids are struggling with reading, they're going to focus on where the challenge is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And so then hence you continue with the legacy of poverty in certain communities, because this is not, just like in certain communities, you have an abundance of worksheets. That's my education coming in here. But you have, an abundance of worksheets as opposed to some meaningful, tactile, strategic education. And I'm getting ready to get my stuff. But you have that going on as opposed to, oh, guys, complete this worksheet within 15, 20 minutes. And
Yes.
that it's not in certain communities. It's not
Right.
happening. And so, like you said, the priority is not there. And so we as parents, as activists, as community members, as entrepreneurs, we have to try to, I know we can't change the school system. I've tried to do it, and hence, right? Other
Yeah.
than but we have to do what we can to try to,
Yes.
influence our communities, to have families, young people. Again, 18 years old, we popping. 18, I'm trying to have a good time. What are you talking about? I need these new sneakers, these Yeezys or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I think are ugly, but anyway, that's a whole nother issue. But it's like, you want to invest in that. Kanye is chilling right now.
Right.
So you need to really bank off of that. And I appreciate what you said, because I know even in music and in entertainment, Nas, I just shared this with my oldest son too. Nas is he's partnered with with a company, I think it's called Royal, where he's allowing a certain amount of shares of his music rights to be purchased. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
shoot, that's a boss move right there.
Right.
Of course, you can't have all of it, but to
Right.
be able to own a few shares of Nas's music and to get paid, what do they call
Residual, residual income.
I was talking to my daughter about that. I said, that's the kind of income you're talking about.
Yes.
You don't necessarily have to work for it, right? But you're gonna get a check, royalty.
Right.
You'll get the royalty check every month or every other month or however it works out. That's thinking. I'm saying, man, that was a brilliant move. Who has done that before?
Yes. Yeah, we talk about financial independence and what it means. And really, it's the ability to have your income generated without you having to continuously work, right? That's having some sort of income. And when we sit down with folks, we talk about, well, what's your financial independence number? Which is the amount of money you need to have saved so that you don't have to work again. Everyone needs to know what their financial independence number is. And so we're
gonna work on mine.
Oh, yeah.
Work on mine. I'm not playing. I am not playing. And
definitely.
I'm saying this to all, because I know we have some followers, and I know that there are, we have another event coming up. It's strictly for women's vision board party. I did it last year. Remember, I was telling you, I planned for an hour and a half, and it literally went for 5 hours.
Yeah.
We had cocktails, folks was having their little appetizers. It was a vibe. And to have conversation with women who either are experiencing the same thing that you have, they have experienced it already, or they're women in that group, in that network, who are learning, oh, I might be going through this, hence menopause, hence whatever, finances and stuff like that.
Right.
We are at the forefront as far as women and really trying to get it together. So I'm reaching out. I'm saying this to all the ladies who are going to be at the vision board party. Please, please, please reach out to Miss Sharon Lewis. If you know someone else, I know folks are with a comfort level. It's like being comfortable with your coffee that you love, your particular coffee, but working with someone that you're comfortable with, who can help you go from point A to point B and still have something for your family as well as yourselves. I want to be able to go on this long excursion to Europe.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but but it's in the plan. And so maybe you can help me. But I really encourage everyone, just try to, like you said, start somewhere. If it's nothing but $25, $50, if you have the $100, start with something.
Definitely.
And I'm going to ask you one more time to tell folks how they, or you can put it up again if you like.
Oh yeah, let me share.
Contact with you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll share that slide. So you can reach me. You can either call me, or you can request to join my Facebook group, or you can find me on Instagram at Sharon M. Lewis Money Coach. And here's my email and my website as well, which is SharonMLewis.com. And then my email is SharonMLewis29@gmail.com.
That's that branding. That's that branding right there.
Yes, and that has been a process too.
Oh yeah, all of us in our generation that are really it's the adaptability, right? Having that
Right.
opportunity to adapt to what changes are taking place.
Exactly.
It's a challenge for some of us, but I applaud all of us who are doing it, and we're gonna keep on doing it. But I just really want to thank you again. I know that this information has been extremely vital to me on a personal level, and I hope when folks get a chance to view the live, whether they're here now or whether they get a chance to see it later on, really take into account those pivotal points as far as your will, your life insurance, and what type of life insurance you have. I think that is one of the main questions that I have too. And not just being a stasher, but being a smart saver, a smart investor, and
Yes.
and helping your family just in case, because we never know what may happen. Life is short. We've learned this over the past 2.5 years. Life is very short. Anything could happen. Let's just be prepared. And I'll say this is a quote that I used to give my students all the time. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
It's that simple. Either you're going to prepare, right? Or you're going to fail. That's it.
Right.
That's
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yes.
thank you so much. This was really very helpful, very and good conversation. I told you, conversation.
Yes, I like that. Thank you so
Nothing.
much for inviting me. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
I think we get caught up in the formalities a little bit too much. But this is something like if we went to brunch, this is the type of conversation that we would have. And I say, wait a minute,
Right.
Sharon, let me write that down.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I value those conversations. I really do. And I appreciate you taking your time on this Saturday. We were planning for it to be a literacy night, but it's literacy night day. That's
Yes. Well, that's okay. I'm
yeah.
available if you need me for any future events, and I enjoy, talking about this topic. So yeah. So that's cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So now I'm struggling with this one here. I'm trying to remember how I stopped the recording on Facebook
Well,
in the live. We ended,
yes.
right?
Yes.
That would be the wise thing to do, of course. All right. Bear with me, Miss Sharon. Bear with me. Okay. Here we go. Stop it.